resolutions coming before this convention need to be submitted in writing to communications@diovermont.org no later than 6:30 p.m. this evening for discussion by convention later in the evening. For amendments, we ask that you use the exact wording you wish to strike from an existing resolution and or add or substitute to that resolution. Nominations for elected offices from the floor of convention are permitted. If anyone has a late nomination for a leadership position opening, please email the name and your affiliation to communications@diovermont.org by 6:30 at the latest. That should cover things, Bishop.
Oops, I'm still muted. We acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Abenaki people on which we are worshiping, praying, and celebrating today. We honor the Abenaki people who have been living and working on this land from time immemorial. We recognize that colonialism and the oppression of Native peoples is a current and ongoing process, and we commit to building our awareness of our present participation. And so, we give thanks for those who have come before us, honoring the legacy of Vermont's Indigenous people, the Abenaki people of the Dawn. We are grateful for the care and sharing of this land. God be with you. Let us pray. O God, you manifest in your servants the signs of your presence. Send forth upon us the spirit of love, that in companionship with one another, your abounding grace may increase among us through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. This is a reading from the 2nd chapter of Acts. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone, because many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. So we'll take just a moment of reflection, a minute. By way of devotion to the apostles' teaching, what new boldness are we called to in the pursuit of strengthening our diocesan household? May our work here tonight be done in a spirit of koinonia. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. And I'm going to wait until we take down that so that you can actually see me while I'm talking. Thank you. So those of you who attend diocesan convention regularly, and those of you who keep up with the mountain or who visit our website, may be aware that I am fond of the Bible passage in which Peter, in spite of his fear, gathers up his courage and steps out of the boat to walk toward Jesus amidst a storm on the Sea of Galilee. And of course, we've been living with that scripture for quite some time. And so you may have come here wondering whether I was going to tell you for another year that this story is a metaphor for the challenge that sits before us as a diocese. Well, sure, that passage still works, but there are a lot of us who have become quite adept at stepping out of the boat and going closer to Jesus. So I'm just going to ask you to keep that passage in your back pocket because, as you've heard, I've been living with another passage of scripture that I've been inviting you all to contemplate along with me. After a second year in which our state has suffered devastating floods, I'm not going to urge anybody to get their feet wet, especially since I am aware that many of you got your feet wet, your hands dirty, your back sore, and cleaning up after one deluge and then another. In fact, if there is anything life-giving to be wrung from these catastrophes, it is that the people and parishes of our diocese responded with love and ingenuity and generosity to the suffering they saw all around them. I am deeply grateful for the efforts of our disaster relief team, which coordinated our diocesan-wide response to the flooding. And I'm inspired by the example of clergy and congregational leaders in the flood-ravaged parts of our state, especially the central part of our diocese and the Northeast Kingdom, who have been diligent and determined in leading their churches and their communities back from that devastation. And I am grateful to everyone who made a donation or delivered a carload of potable water or helped muck out a house so a family could go home again, or even took someone into your home. You've demonstrated that God's people in the Diocese of Vermont know how to respond faithfully and skillfully in urgent, life-altering situations. And of course, our work is not done. Archbishop Desmond Tutu is frequently quoted as saying, "There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in." Well, we're getting tired of asking why the river keeps knocking at our doors and sweeping into our living rooms every summer. And it's time to work toward the kind of systematic solutions that the Archbishop was pointing us toward. In that regard, I would be remiss here if I didn't mention the essential work that many of you are doing through Vermont Interfaith Power and Light, which, along with the Episcopal Church's Office of Government Relations, has led our efforts to advocate for public policies that will reduce the release of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere and speed the pace of global warming, and that speed the pace of global warming. Some of you will remember that at the 2020 Diocesan Convention, the diocese voted to establish a plan to transition to 100% renewable energy by 2030. And we all know that many things we didn't expect got in the way. But even with that said, our day of reckoning on this issue is coming. And at the risk of playing favorites, if you want to do your part in fighting climate change but aren't sure how to start, my husband, Phil McVeigh, may be able to help you. He is part of a network that has grown out of the efforts of the Anglican Diocese of Montreal, and he and some colleagues here are ready to help churches evaluate their emissions and recommend some affordable best practices for curtailing emissions. So if you want to do your part in fighting climate change, you can reach out to Phil and fill out the self-evaluation survey that's for a congregation that has been in the mountain and is also on the website. And I continue to pray for a summer of uneventful weather. And I promise to keep recovery efforts in front of the people of our diocese so that congregations that have been damaged by the floods don't feel that we have lost interest in helping them and their communities. But I also want to say that I think the floods have taught us something. The people of this diocese, individually and collectively, know how to respond generously, faithfully, and creatively when circumstances require it. When we see the work that needs to be done, we know how to do it. Our response to the floods brought that home in a particularly dramatic fashion, but over the last few years, we've also seen this in subtler and perhaps less visible ways. Getting ourselves ready to work, or to put it in theological terms, equipping ourselves for ministry, focusing our efforts on the jobs God calls us to do has been a primary focus this year and will continue in the next. My staff is much better positioned to act as leaders and partners in this work, thanks to the arrival of Margaret Shadow as our manager of diocesan operations and Sophie Kitchpeck, who is both my executive assistant and our director of communications. Both Sophie and Margaret bring important skills and a deep knowledge of the Episcopal Church to their work, and I'm eager for you to get to know them more. Margaret and Sophie will play key roles in implementing our new mission strategy goals. Executive Council adopted these goals just a couple of weeks ago, and a member of Council will present these goals shortly. And I hate it when people drop spoilers for a movie or TV shows, but I can't help myself when it comes to the story of our ministry, of our diocesan household. So let's just consider what I'm about to say it's a trailer or a preview to the presentation of our new mission strategy goals. As stated in the mountain, the goals are to strengthen congregations, build relationships, and develop leaders and structures. I'm not going to steal the thunder of the Executive Council member who's going to give a brief presentation on our goals. However, I do want to say the process we went through to develop these goals will serve us in good stead in a number of ways. The process we engaged together embodied the transparency and collaboration that is essential to the work we do together. And just to recap quickly, the goals had their roots in a mission leadership review in which many of you took part. Almost 50 members of the diocese participated in either interviews or focus groups as part of the mission leadership review. When the review was over, we published the results. And you'll recall that when Gay Jennings presented the mission leadership review last year, she said that she had never heard of a bishop doing that, releasing the whole report to the whole diocese. And then following that, scores of others attended town hall meetings to ask questions and to offer feedback. We met with the diocese governing bodies to analyze your input, and we worked together to arrive at these goals. I'm really proud of this work and proud of everyone who participated because it helped us understand what your concerns are and where your energy lies. And I want to be clear about the fact that we need your energy. We all need each other's energy. And I think the Holy Spirit spoke to us in the togetherness of mulling over the life of our diocesan household and moments of reflecting on Scripture. A seed was planted to urge us on in the next chapter of our continuing story. Developing a spirit of koinonia is part of the goals that you'll hear about if you haven't already read. And koinonia is a Greek word that you will learn well and hear me say often. But I keep repeating it just in case you weren't there the first time or the last few times I mentioned it. But koinonia is a Greek word that is often translated as fellowship. but it encompasses an understanding of a community united by their common work, sharing, and connection for the flourishing of their community of faith. Koinonia requires a commitment to collaboration. And that same spirit of collaboration has helped us in so many ways. When Constellation started 2 years ago, we had only 4 congregations and 2 constellations. And they were sitting in this basket of our great trial balloon, a great big experiment. And today there are 5 constellations encompassing 12 congregations. And there are a couple of others in formation. So we are well on the way to having more than 1/3 of our congregations benefiting from their part in a constellation. There is real energy in this experiment now, and we are learning quickly what works and what doesn't. And on the most basic level, the clerical leaders of our congregations and the lay membership of our churches have a deeper understanding of their ministries and of what they can expect from one another. We are using our resources to provide ministry formation for lay leaders and substantial positions to our clergy and reliable pastoral and sacramental ministry to our people. Collaboration has been something of a watchword for us this past year, and that includes the work we do at Rock Point. As you all know, our ministry on Rock Point has evolved over the years, leading to the development of Rock Point Commons. The board of Rock Point Commons has involved welcoming partnerships and collaboration with community members, the state, and the city. In recent years, the viability of our work on the point has not been set on the most firm financial footing. But this year, my office, our standing committee, our trustees, and chancellor worked closely with Kelly Kimball, the executive director of Rock Point Commons, and the Rock Point Commons board and her staff to create an opportunity that has worked out wonderfully for everyone involved. Our new partnership with the Burlington Public School District brings the newly named Eagle Bay Academy to the point. It gives 60 children an environment in which they can get the education they need. It brings new families into our community on the point, and it provides financial stability that will be in place for decades. And if that isn't enough, this new partnership is also giving us an example I hope we can follow more of as congregations and as a diocese. It lets us invite people into our space. It gives us an opportunity for people to get to know us. It gives them a chance to see that what we do and say is because we are followers of Jesus. Our collaboration, which resulted in the Eagle Bay Academy, to steal a biblical phrase, is an invitation for people to come and see. It is also an example of us joining others in the work that God is already doing and of showing our concern for and commitment to our community. One thing I believe we've learned in the last few years is that we can do hard things. We've had to have some difficult conversations about the role of race in our diocese and our diocesan governance. The role of race has been significant and showed us some parts of our lives together to which there is blindness or insensitivity or biased assumptions. I'm glad that in the mission strategy goals, we will focus on building relationships. This will serve us as well as we continue to develop partnerships and collaborate with each other and beyond. We are congregational, and don't get that confused with congregationalists, because we're not congregationalists, but we are congregational. And we are people that can be that can be a strength to us because we know and love and care for the people close at hand. And it can be a weakness because sometimes when we feel particularly challenged or fearful, we're inclined to focus inward and isolate ourselves from the wider community of faith and those whom we perceive to be different from us. Sometimes we drop into a defensive crouch at just the moment we should be extending our hand in friendship. As the Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas stated in the Mountain article in September, what we need to do is broaden our sense of community as koinonia, a spiritual community based on shared commitments. Dr. Douglas says, we build on that because people do know what community looks like. They do know what it means to be affirmed and accepted as part of the community, even as they know what it feels like to be marginalized or excluded from a community. On Saturday, Dr. Douglas reminded us of the church's mandate and role to be in the business of just peacemaking. If we are going to engage in just peacemaking, our work as a church, we have to attend not only to our relationships within the church, but also equip ourselves through self-examination, institutional examination, and learn about the barriers to having authentic and mature relationships outside of who we know in our home and church life. To that end, in 2025, we will engage with the Racial Equity Institute, which takes a history-based approach to its anti-racism work, as well as our continued involvement in Sacred Ground. This gives us an opportunity to continue to do our anti-racism work in a way that invites conversation and mutual understanding. I am hoping that these conversations will equip and empower us to more faithfully respect the dignity of every human being. As agreed to in the covenant between me and the Diocese of Vermont, it is expected that the bishop will take a sabbatical every 5 years. My sabbatical will be March through June of 2025. As per the canons of the Episcopal Church, the Standing Committee is the ecclesiastical authority in the absence of the bishop. I am working with the Standing Committee and staff to work out the details of my time away, and we will let you know more as the time comes closer. From Acts, from the second chapter of Acts, and the 42nd verse, in our baptismal promises, we have a reminder of the importance of koinonia in building the early church. And it says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, and I will say koinonia, or fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. Developing a spirit of koinonia is also about sharing in the work of being the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement in Vermont. As a diocese, we have work to do, and we could use a few more people sharing in the work. Parish governance and diocesan governance are participatory. It's one of the glories of the Episcopal Church that we share authority. This is true at General Convention. It's true on the diocesan level, where there are multiple opportunities for participation, and it's true on vestries and bishops' committees. But as the church gets smaller and our population gets older, we don't always have all the hands we need. So tonight, I want to issue 3 invitations. The first is to get involved in our diocesan structures, run for something, accept an appointment, volunteer. The second is to let you know that if you believe the machinery of our governance requires more people than we've got to do it, let me and some of the other leaders of the diocese know. I have no desire to shift the ways in which authority is shared and exercised in our church. But if you believe we've reached a point where we need to simplify our structures and our operations, I've been more than open to that conversation. This is part of the continuing work of what we have attempted to do with the Thrive recommendations we have been experimenting with over the last 3 years. When we come to our next diocesan convention, we will have a reporting of how that experiment has gone. We'll talk about what we've learned from it and where it will take us. You'll have an opportunity to add your voice to the conversation about how the Thrive recommendations have worked or not worked. So stay tuned and please stay engaged. And then my third request is about making sure we are grounded in who we are and why we do it, and the ways we can be strengthened for our work. The work of being a diocese or a congregation means little if we aren't availing ourselves of the apostles' teaching. I'm inviting each of us to participate in some form of formation around Christian practices and faith with a group of other people on their journey of Christian faith. These are the foundations of what makes healthy, growing, and strong congregations and allows us to be present as the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement in Vermont. There may be opportunities in your local parish, and if not, there will continue to be opportunities on a diocesan level. Developing a spirit of koinonia, being and building beloved community, that fellowship we all long for, doesn't require a particular number of committees, but it does require us being grounded in our faith as we work together with open hearts and sustainable systems toward the future to which God is calling us. I pray that through devotion to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, the breaking of bread and the prayers, we may be refreshed and renewed to be the church God is calling us to be. I now call on Sophie Kitchpeck for election buddy and Zoom poll orientation.
All right, everyone, good evening. It is it is such an honor to be with you all this evening for the first time as the director of communications. So the number one we have for tonight's convention, we will be using both Election Buddy and Zoom polls. Hopefully you all by this time have successfully logged into Election Buddy and done our test ballot for the night, voting whether or not we should still have snow after March 1st in the Diocese of Vermont. That ballot will be open for a couple more minutes. But I encourage you all to get logged in and continue to fill out that ballot. I will close it after we conduct our Zoom poll test and let you all know the results of the vote. Please make sure but before we go into Zoom poll, please make sure you're logged into Election Buddy. We did a tutorial of how to go through all of that at our pre-convention hearing. When you log in, you should be prompted for an access key and password. You all received your access keys and password via email last week and should have received them again this afternoon, inviting you to participate in our test vote. Once you've logged in, please make sure to after you've completed the vote, please make sure to leave the voting page open, as this is where all of our Election Buddy ballots will show up this evening. If we have started a vote and you have not seen it on your browser yet, just wait a second, refresh, and hopefully it will be there. Don't worry, we will make sure everyone has enough time to vote this evening, as well as giving you any help if you need it. If you do need help tonight, please email the communications@diovermont.org address, and I will do my best as we get through the other business of convention to help you. So with all that said, we are going to move on to our test Zoom poll. All right, and it should show up on your screen momentarily. I hope this is not a overly controversial question for all of you. Oh. right, y'all are doing so well. We're almost there. All right, just gonna give you guys a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. And it looks like we have voted dogs over cats at a very, very slim margin. Thank you all for your participation in that. All right. Let me take a quick look. All right. I am going to go ahead and close the test ballot. Don't worry if you weren't able to get in to this one. We will make sure everyone can vote in our procedural ballots on all of our resolutions. All right. Oh, and it seems we have voted. I will share the screen in a second. That we should have no more snow after March 1st. We should have no more snow after March 1st. Again, at a very, very slim margin. 1 second, and I will share the results with all of you. And look at that. Wow, that was close. All right. If you are having any issues with Election Buddy this evening, please email communications@diovermont.org and hopefully I'll be able to get you sorted out. All right. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Sophie. Pursuant to Title 1, Canon 1.3 and 6 of Vermont Canons, a list of canonically resident clergy present and entitled to vote, and a list of congregations with lay delegates present and entitled to vote is available. Pursuant to Title 1, Canon 3.4, I appoint Tom Little as Chancellor of the Diocese. This appointment does not require confirmation by a vote of convention. Pursuant to Title 1, Canon 1.8, I appoint Paul Olson as Secretary of the Convention. This appointment is subject to confirmation by vote of convention. The question before the convention is, shall the convention confirm the appointment of the Secretary of Convention? And is there any discussion? Being none, then the matter before us is the convention's confirming of this appointment. A Zoom poll will appear on your screen shortly. Vote yes to confirm the appointment and vote no to withhold confirmation.
The results are now available.
All right. Yes, we have confirmed that Paul Olson will serve as Secretary of Convention. Thank you. I call on the Secretary of Convention.
Thank you all for that vote of confidence. The proposed rules of order for conducting our business at convention, voting instructions, and other housekeeping announcements have been made available on the diocesan website by the Secretary of Convention. Please keep this information in mind as we conduct our business this evening. A simple reminder about how to address the bishop. You should use the address of either Bishop Shannon or Right Reverend Madam when speaking. In the course of doing business tonight, to be recognized to speak by the Zoom host, please make use of the raise hand function in the Zoom platform. Once you are recognized, you will be able to unmute yourself. And as you begin speaking, please begin by clearly stating your name, the congregation, and town that you represent. If you've raised your hand in error or no longer need to be recognized, simply press the raised hand function again so that you can take your hand down. You are welcome in the course of our time together tonight to chat with one another using the chat function of Zoom, but you should not really use that for official business of convention. If you wish to be recognized and speak to convention, it is best to use the raised hand function. One final note, one of my duties as Secretary of Convention is to communicate to this diocesan convention all of the actions taken by the 2024 General Convention that make changes to either the Constitution of the Episcopal Church or alterations to the Book of Common Prayer. I direct your attention to the written report filed in the Pre-Convention Journal, which does detail those changes and amendments that were made by the most recent General Convention. And I turn it back to you, Bishop.
Thank you, Paul. I now call on Tom Little, the Diocesan Chancellor, to explain the proposed rules of order as published in the pre-convention materials.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. Good evening, all. The proposed rules of order, with one exception that I will explain in a moment, are the same rules of order that our convention has been using for at least 20 years. They have worked well, have not seemed to have caused any difficulties, have helped us do our business efficiently and fairly. The one exception is that this year we are proposing to add into the rules of order themselves the limit on debate for 20 minutes for each resolution or other question following the presentation of the resolution or question, and the 2-minute limit on the on each speaker other than the presenter of the resolution or question. So those two time limits are something that we in the past have agreed on by unanimous consent or no objection, and this year we decided to put them in the proposed rules of order themselves. Bishop Shannon, I recommend that the rules of order be adopted as presented and published. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I call for a motion to accept the rules of order for this convention.
I see a hand raised by Greta Getline.
So moved.
Is there a second?
See Rachel Field has raised a hand.
Seconded.
Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, the question before us is the motion to accept the proposed rules of order. Please indicate your vote using the Zoom poll that will appear on your screen. Vote yes to accept the rules of order and no to reject the rules of order. The motion passes. The next order of business is presenting the annual convention reports for acceptance. A link to the pre-convention journal can be found on the diocesan website and in the chat box now. I call for a motion to accept the reports as filed. Please use the raised hand function and remember to clearly state your name and your congregation when moving and seconding motions. We got the other twos, but moving forward.
I see a hand raised from Joshua Cheney for the motion.
Hi, Joshua Cheney, All Saints, South Burlington. I move to accept.
Is there a second?
See a hand raised by David Frederickson.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the acceptance of convention reports. Please indicate your vote using the Zoom poll that will appear on your screen. Vote yes to accept the convention reports and no to reject the reports. Thank you. The motion passes 99% voting yes and 1% no. I call on Diocesan Chancellor Tom Little for remarks on the legislative process, including a review of guidelines for time limits on discussion and debate on resolutions.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. We've heard and you've adopted the proposed rules of order, which contain the time limitations on the length of presentations for resolutions and other questions, and the 2-minute limit for each individual. Our practice has also been to not the rules of order also provide that no one may speak a second time on a question or resolution until all others have spoken for a first time. Some other courtesies and such things that I've recited in the past include always identify yourself and your parish or office each time you speak. If you have a question, ask it in the form of a question. If you have a comment, proceed and keep it not more than 2 minutes. Less than 2 minutes is perfectly okay. And to help us with the business, it's helpful if you have a question to just ask the question, and long wind-ups before questions can confuse us as to whether you are asking a question or making a comment. So try to make that distinction. And as always, Please mind your mute button so that we can focus on the person who is speaking. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you. The following clergy transitions have taken place between July of 2023 and July of 2024. On February 14, 2024, they ordained Susan McMillan as a deacon at the Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Burlington. On February 22nd, 2024, the Reverend Nancy Ludwig was received from the Diocese of Maine. On February 15th, 2024, the Reverend Rob Spanauer, as we all know him, was released to the Diocese of South Carolina. On March 27th, 2024, the Reverend Kevin Sparrow was released to the Diocese of South Carolina. Let us take a moment to pray for those clergy who died this past year. And there are two that were canonically resident, the Reverend Jane Garrett and the Reverend Hal Woods, who died just this morning. And active in this diocese, but not canonically resident, were the Reverend Nancy Bloomer, the Reverend David Glendening, and the Right Reverend R. Stu Wood, Jr. Let us pray. Almighty God, with whom still live the spirits of those who die in the Lord, and with whom the souls of the faithful are in joy and felicity, we give you heartfelt thanks for the good examples of all your servants, who, having finished their course in faith, now find rest and refreshment. May we, with all who have died in the true faith of your holy name, have perfect fulfillment and bliss in your eternal and everlasting glory. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. In my convention address, I spoke about how the mission strategy goals came to be. So I'm not going to do that here. You've already heard that. And I want to invite the very Reverend Greta Getline to give us a report on the mission strategy goals.
Thank you, Right Reverend Madam. You heard, as the bishop pointed out, that she let us know in her address how these were developed. And I was asked to just present them briefly tonight. You received these by email. They've been in the mountain for a little while now, the diocesan newsletter. If you don't get that newsletter in your email box, you probably should. So feel free to send Sophie or someone at the diocesan office or Margaret your email, an email saying, hey, please put me on the receiving list for the diocesan mountain. That's where most of our news comes from. And this was in there, I don't know, it's been in there for 3 or 4 weeks, a month, maybe even longer than that. So this should not be unfamiliar to you. So next slide, please, Sophie. There are 3 main goals in this report. The first is to strengthen congregations, and that is to better equip congregations for worship, for forming disciples, and for serving their communities. They're going to, members of the diocese, this is going to include some of you, some who are here, some who are not here, but every parish, sort of to take a temperature of what's going on now with congregations, what's missing from the life of a parish that they might need to become stronger. And then begin to look at sort of what processes are in place or could be put in place, what programs could be put in place, what energy can be tapped, and then sort of who's going to own that so that things don't get dropped, so things get followed through on. There'll be a time of evaluating and reporting so that there's some accountability to all of the stakeholders, which first and foremost, of course, is all of us. But then also if there are grants involved or other agencies involved, sort of those stakeholders as well. And then ongoing communication to maintain the transparency of activity within the diocesan household. All of this sounds fairly nebulous, and it sort of is because we're not doing it yet, but look for all of this to sort of be rolling out over the next year or so as the standing committee and the executive council work closely with the bishop on thinking through how are we going to, now that we've sort of have these goals, how are we going to really implement and enact them? And we'll be doing that work together. Next slide, please. The second goal is to build relationships, and the bishop uses the word koinonia to build this sense of oneness throughout the diocese. And again, there's an audit, sort of how are things now? We began that work last year with Gay Jennings' work and all the work that the bishop spoke about. And we're in a different place now. And so a re-auditing of that would be a helpful thing, sort of where are we now, right now? And again, koinonia, how are we going to begin to gather people together to build and strengthen relationships? Some of that work has begun with the clericuses that the bishop has been leading, gathering area clergy together, but we need to broaden that so we're gathering more than just the clergy together on a regular basis. And then, I mean, think about how great convention was last Saturday to be all in one place together, and there was so much laughter and so much fun. And for me, it was great to meet a lot of you who I haven't had a chance to meet, and we need more of that so that we can continue to build our relationships with each other. And then work, as the bishop mentioned, toward becoming beloved community. We live in the second whitest state in the union, and racism is very real here and often harder to see because it's not as in your face. It's almost easier if it's in your face than when it's not in your face. And so we have work to do to uncover that and work in our own hearts and the hearts of our people, and in the legal and spiritual systems in this place to be better. So as the bishop pointed out, there's going to be work with the Racial Equity Institute and a continuing offering of sacred ground opportunities for parishes to participate in sacred ground. Next slide, please, Sophie. And the third goal is to develop leaders and structures. This is really focused primarily in the diocesan leadership structures to look at role clarity, quality, accountability, policies, and procedures. Some of this will broaden out to the diocese, as the bishop mentioned, sort of evaluating the Thrive stuff that we did and where are we with that, and is that the best way for us to be operating as a diocese? But also some of it's going to be looking a little bit closer internally to things that happen in the diocesan, what I call diocesan house, sort of the actual house that sits on Rock Point and the people that work there, as well as how that sort of moves out to all of us. So looking at the diocesan structures, as we said, the Thrive, does it work? Are they clear? Internal to the diocesan house, policies and procedures, develop and document for human resources, finance and operations. A lot of that is currently underway, which is wonderful. Staff development, clarity of role and job, supervision and accountability, with Sophie and Margaret coming on board, especially Margaret. I imagine a lot of this is going to fall under her, sort of putting these things in place. And then leadership development for diocesan leaders. I don't know about you, but when I got elected to my first committee here, I had no idea what I was doing. And so wouldn't it be nice if we had sort of an official onboarding when you agree to be on a committee or a commission? And so we're working towards that. And then, of course, leadership development for congregational leaders. We've been bouncing this around for a very long time. How can we get newly elected leaders after people's January annual meetings together to talk about what their role is and provide assistance and some guidance and some orientation and tips along the way? That would be a wonderful thing. I've participated in that in other dioceses, and that works towards not just developing those people, but going back to our first goal of developing relationships with each other, or our second goal. And then that, of course, casts back to the first goal of strengthening our congregation. So one more slide, and this is just for fun for me, for kicks. Go ahead, Sophie. Yeah, I've never, you took out the little part. I had a title on this that said, I really don't know how to do this. So this is my really weird attempt at a Venn diagram, which you can't label the little middle thing, but everything is moving us towards stronger congregations. building relationships, equipping congregations, diocesan house clarity, clarity around diocesan structure. All of that gets us to a place where we can be stronger together. And we look forward to continuing to work together towards this. And I hope that you all can be enthusiastic participants as we move down this path to strengthen each one of us for the ministry that Jesus has in store for us. And I think that's all, Bishop. If I've left anything out, feel free to jump in.
No, thank you so much. And I will say that the reason why why Greta is presenting this is not simply because she's often willing to lend a hand, but because she's on executive council, and executive council is the body that approved this set of goals. So thank you so much, Dean Greta. And thank you, Executive Council, for approving this and setting this out for our diocesan household. And a special thanks to everyone who participated in conversations that led to developing these goals. Stay tuned for the action plan. I now call on the interim CFO of the diocese, Michael Shapiro, to present the annual financial report. Or budget report, I should say.
There we go. I couldn't unmute for a moment. Thank you, Bishop Shannon. We talked we talked last week in detail about our diocesan budget for 2025. We've posted some documents, the detailed budget and the narrative, to the website. So I considered tonight just a quick refresh. It will be an abridged version of what I shared last week, just to bring us back. A balanced budget proposed for 2025. The risk, and I think this is true of all budgets, is that we don't know the unforeseen and what is around the bend. And often that can include things like building repairs. Oops. Sorry. The biggest opportunities for us is that this budget does not factor in all funding sources, the proceeds from the sale of parishes that have closed, and I'm speaking of ones that have closed and sold. Often there is some work to do afterwards, confirming our use of those funds, and we have done that and did not factor in those funds for this budget, but do have funds available, and any unforeseen grants and gifts. And so our summary budget, and last week I shared some percentages and talked through it. And while it's important for us as a diocese to break out our budget between operating and non-operating, and we do, tonight and last week for purposes of presentation, I combined them. I think it's more digestible. Our income comes from our parish assessments. It's nearly 60% of where the funding comes from. Our investment income off of our endowments. And our endowments, our unit funds are, as with many parishes, we withdraw 5% per year. And the plan is always that they earn at least 5% per year so that principal is protected forever. Some miscellaneous income in this diocese, the bulk of that for years has been from the Hunt Fund, a grant that we've received annually, and the Bishop's Appeal, which I've noted often not often, in the last 2 years, we have steered that towards flood relief. Within the expenses, the the people make up over about half of our expenses, and we are projecting a shift, and in 2025, from non-employee to personnel, we will be less reliant on outside consultants, including myself, where I still hope to have a role, but we are looking to hire an accountant. Our general and administrative is a lot in here. It's down from 2024. The biggest reason is the hiring of Sophie and the decreased need to outsource our communications expense. Our buildings and lands, this includes the repairs and maintenance. It does not include the utilities for the diocesan office. If we include the utilities, this number is about 90,000, and that would take from the general and administrative above. Our wider church support, most of that is the number we pay to the Episcopal Church of approximately 140, I believe. Our formation and mission budget, which was increased in 2024, it includes what I've noted here: the retreats, the support, the preaching, the lay preaching, special events, a lot of programs, the Safe Church, seminarian support. It is the big add this year was the missional support for the Northeast Kingdom. Our reserve expenses, and I explained a little bit about this last week, so won't much today, but it is a method of accounting where we spread out expenses that traditionally occur in one year, we spread across all years. Grants and loans, we traditionally award approximately 100,000 of grants and loans to parishes. That is directly off of our investment income. And other non-operating expenses in 2025, this represents continued support for Mission Farm. Our budget is funded through this income of $1,425,000 and aided by the use of some existing reserve accounts of approximately $70,000. Our initiatives, this is not all inclusive, but when I think about 2025 initiatives, we need to fill an open accountant role. We certainly want to support the mission strategy goals and action plans that comes from that, and working with Commission on Finance on a multi-year forecast, including an analysis of our assessment model. That is my brief story for this evening. And I will stop my share.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any questions for our interim CFO, Mike Shapiro?
See a question from Lizette Baxter.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Lizette Baxter in Colchester, St. Andrews. Thank you, Greta, for the mission strategy. And I hear a lot of transparency, to be transparent, to be able to really, well, it's a Greek word, which it was French, koinonia, communication, community. And so, and interestingly enough, on Saturday, so many people came to me telling me how they appreciated the fact that I asked for more, to be more transparent for the budget. This budget summary is not enough for me to support, and I don't know if there's something that says abstain or if it has to be no. But for example, for the personnel and employee, I have no idea who is the personnel. Well, I know a few, but I really don't know who are they. You know, the grants and loans, that's a big number. But what are they supporting? You know, how wonderful if we could see the details. You know, we could really be able to support it to be much more in community. So I really am saddened that we just don't have any details, that we just have big numbers. And So this budget doesn't tell me anything, and that's why I cannot support this budget. But I would, if we want to be a community, then we need to be transparent with one another. We need to be able to put things out. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Field has a comment or a question.
Well, can I say something first?
Sure. Yes,
Yeah.
Bishop.
Because that wasn't actually a question, but there was a question last week, when you spoke with us, Lisette. Part of what Dean Greta talked about about transparency is that we've done a lot of work on a diocesan level, along with the Commission on Finance, to clean up the finances. And it's taken some number of years, and they were not transparent. And the loan process, just even that, how that happened, has now much more communication across those that are reviewing the grant applications from people within the diocese. And I'm really proud of the work that people have, and the time and energy that people have dedicated to that. As far as the question about salaries, I have several things. Firstly, I wonder, what is this line of questioning really about? I mean, we've listed every employee that we have is listed on the diocesan website and has been, announced in the mountain. And so I wonder, is this a question of making sure that the Diocese of Vermont is engaging in fair practices? Or are you trying to make sure that people are justly compensated? Or are you trying to make sure that people are paid less or as little as possible? I don't know. I mean, well, let me continue. We will not be publishing the salaries of diocesan staff. This should not be done in parishes either. I know that people do it, but it shouldn't be done. You may not be aware, but this is not a professional or standard practice. Publishing the salaries lacks confidentiality and respect for our employees, and does not bring with it all the information considered as these agreements are made. This is not, this isn't an appropriate space for a discussion of those sorts of details. And I will also add that the people who agree on the loans, they're on the Commission on Finance, and they review those loans and those grants that we give to people, in the diocese. There's a process for these things. There's a process for the salaries as well, and that's what we're going to follow. Executive Council has a responsibility of approving and providing a budget for the diocese. The Standing Committee is responsible for negotiating the bishop's salary, and the bishop hires staff in consultation with people who have knowledge about a given position needing to be filled. And of utmost importance in our hiring process is offering a just and equitable wage. We also have to offer compensation that is competitive if we're going to get competent people to join our staff. And, I have to say, to question the lack of transparency, and last week you actually asked, what are we hiding, or if we're keeping secrets? There's no secrets. We're not hiding anything, and there is transparency. But to say those things implies that you don't trust me or Executive Council, and it's not helpful for the conversation.
Are there any other questions for our CFO? Rachel, you had raised your hand prior.
Thank you, Paul. Rachel Field, St. Mary's Northfield. Yeah, just wanted to follow up on this point as well. Just noting two things really. One, you can do some digging around to other dioceses in the Episcopal Church. Having a single staff line item is fairly normative for the church. So we're actually in accordance with best practices for the church by having our budget presented this way. And second, I'll just note that the standing committee, as Bishop Shannon mentioned, was reviewing staff compensation. And so that number that we have for staff who are all noted on the diocesan website represents a wage for each staff person that is equitable according to the clergy guidelines that we have as a diocese. So we've done a lot of work and spent a lot of time in committee on this. And I just wanted to highlight that point, that both it's normative and that the standing committee has spent considerable time making sure that the wages are fair and equitable. Thank you.
Question or comment from Greta Getline?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Right Reverend Madam. Greta Getline, Cathedral Church of St. Paul, Chair of the Commission on Finance. I want to put to bed this any issues that anybody has with the grants and loans line on the budget. The $100,000 line is an anticipated amount of grants that will be awarded in 2025. That number is based on the average amount of grants that we have awarded over the past many years. We've done a huge amount of work to track that information, and we're pretty confident with that number. Every single member parish is invited to apply for grants on a rolling basis throughout the year. We have funds that are specifically restricted to grants, and they produce approximately $100,000 a year, which we then get to give away, which is a fantastic thing. Loans are not included in that line item. We do have restricted funds that are restricted only to loans to member parishes. Many of you have received them. And again, parishes are welcome to apply for loans on a rolling basis throughout the year. That's a fairly large amount that we have for loans, which is wonderful. We don't put that into the budget because we don't know how many loans people are going to ask for, and it's not really a budget item. It's a separate thing that doesn't really belong in the budget. So that line item was really only for grants, and it's based on what comes in and what we get to give away. Hope that helps put this to bed.
Thank you. See next, Stan Baker has asked to make a question.
Thank you. And thank you, Bishop Shannon. I just wanted to say, we talked about this in standing committee as well. I believe the last time anybody's salary was published in this diocese was 2009. So this is not a new practice. And we find that publishing people's salaries is not helpful to the morale of our staff and actually puts people in embarrassing situations. So Bishop Shannon's view in this completely. Thank you.
Thank you. David Bullock has his hand raised for a question.
Thank you. I want to comment on what I feel might be behind this request for transparency. From my understanding, all of these line items are reviewed completely by either the standing committee or the executive committee or the committee on finance. There is no lack of transparency. It might not be evident in this budget, but the details are reviewed, and we have colleagues that are looking at this stuff and dissecting it and making sure we're in complete concurrence on loans or on salaries or on everything else. I don't think it's appropriate at the convention that we should dissect the budget down to minutia. I think we have professionals that are doing that, and we have these other subcommittees that are supporting us in that effort. So from my perspective, I think the bishop is right on with saying that confidentiality on salary should not be disclosed, but I also think loans and all the other things those are line items. And I think we should be comfortable that other colleagues and partners and parishes and everybody else are reviewing this, and we're doing it all for God's work. Thank you.
And Becky, I believe Colette it is who has a hand raised.
Yes, hi, this is Becky Coletti. I'm from St. Luke's Mission in Fairhaven, Vermont. And I just, went and double checked. And if anybody has questions about what the Finance Committee does, I would urge them to put themselves forward. I see no nominations for that committee. And what a wonderful way to learn the process by being part of a committee. And thank you for all the work you've done.
Bishop, I see no other hands raised for questions.
Thank you. And thank you for that presentation, Mike. I now call on Ann Brown, Chair of the Resolutions Committee, to present and move approval of resolutions beginning with the diocesan budget.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. I'd like to start by thanking members of the Resolutions Committee, Stan Baker, Nancy Gordon, and Nancy Woodkey. Then I want to remind us that the rules of order we agreed on, we talked about the timing for debate. Be sure you announce who you are and where you're from. People have been good about that so far. Use the raised hand function. And let us know if you're speaking in favor or against a resolution as you start your comments, or if you're asking just a question for clarification. Our rules include a provision for adding resolutions to the agenda that were submitted after the deadline set by the Committee on Dispatch of Business. Many of you, I hope all of you, noticed that we do have a proposed additional resolution. It's been on the website since Wednesday. It came in late and you'll find out why. But this is Resolution 6, becoming a sanctuary diocese. The proposers will have 2 minutes to explain why the resolution should be debated by the convention. We'll not debate the substance of it, only at this time whether the convention will suspend the rules of order to consider it. The rules require a 2/3 affirmative vote to place it on the agenda, and it will, if it's placed on the agenda, it will come last after we've discussed the other resolutions. Bishop Shannon, I ask you to call on the Reverend Canon Lee Crawford.
I invite the Reverend Canon Lee Crawford of St. Mary's Northfield to explain why we should consider the proposed Resolution 6, becoming a sanctuary diocese.
Thank you, Right Reverend Madam. I urge the convention to vote to put this resolution on the agenda to be discussed later this evening. The resolution will not make the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont a sanctuary diocese tonight. Rather, it will provide for a study group with a 1-year mandate to report back to convention next year the theological, practical, legal, and ethical concerns relating to sanctuary, and the process by which the diocese might become a sanctuary diocese. By placing this resolution on the agenda, we can move forward in response to very timely concerns about the wayfarers in our midst. I move that Resolution 6 be included on the agenda.
Is there a second?
See, Gay Ann Murphy has raised her hand.
Gay Murphy, St. Stephen's in Middlebury. I second the motion that we put this resolution on the agenda to discuss later tonight.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? And I invite Canon Lee Crawford to remain unmuted so she may answer questions about why we should consider this resolution.
Bishop, I see no hands raised for discussion.
Okay, thank you. The matter before the convention is whether to add Resolution 6, becoming a sanctuary diocese, to the agenda of the convention. Please indicate your vote using the Zoom poll that will appear on your screen. Vote yes to approve the motion to add the resolution, and vote no to reject the motion. The motion passes to add the resolution to the agenda. 92% approving yes. Oh, and now I call on Ann Brown to present Resolution 1, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 integrated budget. Oh, actually 25, sorry. Integrated budget for the Diocese of Vermont.
Thank you, Right Reverend Madam. As chair of the Resolutions Committee, I move adoption of Resolution 1. We have had a presentation from the interim financial officer, and I think everybody's had a chance to look at the resolution. It's a fairly simple resolution. It has the total amounts, and it also explains the contributions to be made by congregations, and those tiers are the same as in the past year. It also includes a provision that a congregation may appeal their assessment to the Commission on Finance. So that's really the basic text of the resolution, and I move its adoption.
Is there any discussion? And I invite interim CFO Shapiro, Mike, to remain unmuted so he may answer questions about this resolution.
Bishop, I see no hands raised for any discussion or question.
The matter before the convention is Resolution 1, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 integrated budget for the Diocese of Vermont, using election buddy vote yes to approve the resolution, vote no to reject the resolution.
All right, the vote will be open in just a moment.
And while we are voting, and once you are finished, we will take a brief 2-minute pause for delegates to register their votes and then begin presentation of the next resolution. We will announce the results of the vote on Resolution 1 before we begin the vote on Resolution 2. And while we're doing all of that, you will see on your screen a brief video that was the Diocese of Vermont's portion of the roll call prior to the installation of our new presiding bishop, the Most Reverend Sean Rowe, on November 2nd. And I'll just add that I was sick with COVID and didn't know it. Greetings from the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont and myself, Bishop Shannon McVeigh Brown. Dear people of God, we are blessed to join with you all online, representing 42 congregations nestled throughout the Green Mountain State. We also come to you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Abenaki people, on which we Vermonters worship, pray, and celebrate today. We're grateful for the caring and share of this land, and pray for the healing of God's creation. May God's abundant love be with you, with our new presiding bishop and Episcopalians everywhere, today and always.
All right, the vote is still open if you haven't had a chance to vote yet. And again, if you're having issues, please put them in the chat or email communications@dialvermont.org.
So some of you are still voting. Don't worry about that. You can continue to do that. Yeah, it was silent, Bob, because no one was speaking. I mean, you didn't miss anything. But I missed my cue to invite us to move on to the next resolution, and those of you that still need to vote can continue to do that. I call on Ann Brown to present and move approval of Resolution 2 establishing minimum clergy compensation for 2025.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. Resolution 2, as the bishop said, is the resolution that we are required to do every year to establish a minimum standard for clergy compensation for the coming year. I believe I would like to move that resolution. I move that we adopt Resolution 2 establishing minimum clergy compensation for 2025, and Bishop Shannon will invite someone to speak to it.
I invite the Very Reverend Greta Getline to speak to this resolution.
Thank you, Right Reverend Madam. Sophie, I know you've got like 25 hands on 6 keyboards trying to help everybody out right now, but if you could just advance to the slide, if it's in there, that'd be fantastic. Thank you very much. As Anne pointed out, Greta Getline, clergy, Cathedral Church of St. Paul, chair of the Commission on Finance, which is how I'm here doing this. I just wanted to highlight the changes from last year to this year. It's in the same format as it was last year, but a few changes. First, the cost of living adjustment has been put into the grid, as it were, at 2.5%, which is the federal cost of living adjustment. The equity allowance for clergy living in church supplied housing has been increased from, I believe it was 4.7% to 5% of total clergy compensation. There are some increases in the supply clergy rates, so please pay attention to that. I don't think that they've changed in a little while, but they've changed for next year. So make sure your treasurers get that. And the most significant thing is the health insurance changes. We recognized this year that the Diocese of Vermont had sort of inadvertently restricted ourselves to the PPO 90 plan, which is the second most expensive health insurance plan that the church health insurance offers. Many other dioceses only recommend PPO 70 as the minimum for parishes to give to lay or clergy employees. So we've settled for the middle ground of PPO 80, which keeps the out-of-pocket maximum at $2,000 or below. If we went to PPO 70, the out-of-pocket maximum would be $7,000, and that just seems untenable for most of us. So, so to make this work, the HRA max will be at $2,000. which covers the out-of-pocket expense for the PPO 80. There are resources available to help you guide you if you're hiring a new clergy person. Hopefully, if you have a stable clergy person in place, these changes will be easy to make and simple for you. But the all of the guidelines are on 3 different places on the website. They're under the Diocesan Convention 2024 pieces. They're under the resources for leaders under clergy, and under resources for leaders under the congregational resources, supply clergy for those rates. Sophie is busy sort of reworking a portion of the website to have some clear pointers to where this stuff is going to be. So you can always contact her if you can't find something. If you have any questions about how to calculate clergy compensation, you can contact Linda Grenz, our transition ministry consultant, and her email is right there. Linda has also offered 2 upcoming Zoom sessions with her on 2 different Saturdays that you can Zoom into and ask her your very specific parish-specific questions. That information went out again to everybody, all clergy and treasurers, I believe, in the diocese. So if you did not get that, if you're clergy or treasurer, please contact Sam Sellers and she will resend it to you. I believe that that's correct. And that's all about the clergy compensation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Greta. Oh, sorry, I'm not trying to take Paul's position, his job right here.
There are some hands raised, Bishop, I believe, for some discussion on this point.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well, can I just say one more thing that
I'm
Linda,
sorry. Go ahead.
Linda Grenz reminded me of? Tomorrow is the last day for open enrollment. If you haven't done it yet, it's going to default to PPO 90, which is the more expensive plan. So make sure you get in there and make your selection to PPO 80. Thank you. Sorry about that. My apologies, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
And my apologies, also, Mr. Secretary. I forgot to ask if there are any questions. Go ahead.
Looks like there are a few. So I'll recognize Earl Coopercamp, who I believe had his hand raised first. Who just needs to be unmuted.
Right,
There we go.
Okay, yeah, Earl Coopercamp from St. Mary's Parish, Northfield, and Church of the Good Shepherd in Barrie. And just as I mentioned last week, I would remind clergy colleagues that this vote actually very directly or indirectly benefits yourself. So it's something that we should do very prayerfully. Thank you.
And recognize Mary O'Brien with either a question or comment for discussion.
Yes, what was the old out-of-pocket expense for the PPO 90?
Dean Greta, can you address that?
I didn't really use it, but I believe it was 1,000. That's the deal. So and the HRA was a max of 1,500. So this raises the out-of-pocket to 2,000, but the HRA will match that $2,000. So you just keep your receipts, submit them to your treasurer, and they will expense that to the diocese.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Linda says HRA 1,500 for single and 2,000 is family. There you go.
Any other questions or further discussion on the resolution? I am seeing no hands raised for discussion, Bishop.
Thank you. I do have the results from the last election. Just one second. So the budget passes with 95.45% passing. So the budget has been passed. Thank you. The matter then before the convention is Resolution 2, establishing minimum clergy compensation for 2025. Using election buddy, vote yes to approve the resolution, vote no to reject the resolution. And I will say that when you go to look for the ballot, you'll have to refresh and it will be available shortly for you to vote.
All right, the vote is opening momentarily. And the vote is now open.
While delegates are completing their votes, we will take a brief 3-minute pause. And then we will announce the results of the vote on Resolution 2. But you will get to see some fun pictures from our in-person portion of convention while you're completing this vote.
All right, y'all are doing so well. Give you just a little bit more time. All right, the vote is closing momentarily. And the vote is now closed.
The vote to pass establishing minimum clergy compensation for 2025 has passed. The resolution has passed with 97.14% in favor. Before we consider the remaining resolutions, let's move to the nomination and election of individuals offering themselves to serve in leadership roles in the diocese. Were any additional nominations for elected office received by 6:30 p.m.? I think there's not, right?
Mm-mm.
Right, thank you. I call on Paul Olson, Secretary of Convention, to provide an update on nominations.
Yes, right, Reverend Madam Bishop, we are correct that there are no additional nominations to be added to the slate that were received by 6:30. I can introduce, if you would like, the nominees who are standing for election to uncontested slots for various diocesan entities then.
Yes, I call on you to do so. Thank you.
For the disciplinary board of the diocese, clergy nominees for 2 3-year terms uncontested are the Reverend Mary Lindquist of St. Michael's Brattleboro and the Reverend Christine Mosley of St. Mark's Newport. To serve on the disciplinary board as a lay nominee for a 3-year term uncontested, Lucas Kruger of St. Paul's Wells. As clergy delegate to the Synod of the Province of New England for a 3-year term, running uncontested, is the Reverend Titus Pressler of St. Matthew's, Enosburg Falls. As an alternate lay delegate to the Synod of the Province of New England for a 3-year uncontested term, David Bullock of St. Mark's, Newport. There are nominees to serve on the Rock Point Commons Board of Directors for a 3-year term, uncontested, is the Reverend Nancy Ludwig of St. Thomas and Grace Church in Brandon. Nominees for the Rock Point School Board of Trustees for 4 3-year terms are Mark Bonin, Deidre Keenan, Daphne Layton, and Kelly Scannell. For the Standing Committee, clergy nominee for a 4-year term, uncontested, the Reverend Dr. Frederick Moser of Trinity Church, Shelburne. And for the Standing Committee, lay member of that, for a 4-year term, uncontested, Kathy Mary Hugh of St. Andrews in Colchester. Nominee for a 2-year term, uncontested, as trustee of the diocese, Sarah Cowan of St. Paul's Church in Vergennes, and a nominee for a 3-year term as trustee of the diocese in an uncontested election, Becky Colette of St. Luke's Church, Fairhaven. Those are all of the nominees being put forward for uncontested elections to diocesan offices.
A motion is in order to elect all candidates just named to the offices for which they are running in uncontested elections. We need a motion.
Is there a motion? Stan Baker, I see, has raised his hand.
I move that we elect all candidates on the ballots in these uncontested elections.
Is there a second?
I see Earl Coopercamp had his hand up pretty quickly.
Second.
The matter before us is the election of all nominees for uncontested offices. Please vote using the Zoom poll that will appear on your screen. Vote yes to approve the election of all nominees. Vote no to reject the election of all nominees. The motion to elect all nominees has been approved and all are elected with 98% voting yes. Thank you. Many thanks to Paul Olson for his efforts to bring us qualified candidates for diocesan leadership. And before we proceed with consideration of the remaining resolutions, let us take a 10-minute break. We are doing well. And our timekeeper needs to tell me what is the moment we should be back here and ready to continue. I think
we should, it's suggested that we should reconvene from a break at 8 o'clock, Bishop.
All right, 7 is a good biblical number too. So 7 minutes, 8 o'clock. See you then.
I would ask people to gather back for the remaining portion of the business session, if you could. We are set to proceed.
All right, I call on Ann Brown, Chair of the Resolutions Committee, to present and move approval of other resolutions to come before this convention. Ann is still muted, so we can't hear what she's saying.
Thought I'd hit it. Thank you, Right Reverend Madam, for reminding me. I didn't look at the little icon quick enough. As chair of the resolutions committee, I am going to propose that we consider two of our resolutions. We have four remaining. We'll do two before we recess to meet as the incorporators of the Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. And then we'll consider the others after that. Both of these resolutions are revisions to the canons. Since they're offered by the Canons Committee, we do not have to consider them at successive conventions, since they are offered by the committee, but we can adopt them immediately if they pass in votes by orders. That's 2/3 affirmative votes in each order to pass them. Otherwise, they have to come back to the convention next year. To speed the process, we'll consider both resolutions and then we'll vote using election buddy. So the first resolution is resolution 3. This is to revise the canons to amend canon number 8, which provides for our deputation to provincial meetings. And I believe Tom Little will speak to this. I'm going to move the resolution first that we revise the canons to amend canon 8.
And is there any discussion? Also, I invite Chancellor Tom Little to answer questions about this amendment.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon, and I will make a short presentation on behalf of the Canons Committee, on behalf of Chair Steve Marshall and Canon Committee members, the Reverend Walter Brownridge, Lindsay Huddle, and the Reverend Bram Kranichfeld. The Synod of the province of New England, which is all of the Episcopal dioceses of New England, changed their canon, the provincial canon, regarding diocesan representation back in 2020 to specify that each diocese is entitled to 3 representatives, now identified as delegates rather than deputies, and 3 alternates, in each case to serve a 3-year term. Previously, each diocese in the province had 2 delegates and 2 alternates. Under the proposed revised canon, at least one of each group, the delegates and the alternate delegates, must be a member of the clergy and one a lay person. The proposed resolution brings the canons of our diocese into conformity with those of our province in a way that the Canons Committee found to be the most efficient and effective. I would be happy, Bishop Shannon and Ann, to take questions now or to go into greater detail if somebody would like me to. And I guess on behalf, if it hasn't happened already, on behalf of the Canons Committee, I would move adoption of resolution number 3 at this time.
Bishop Shannon, I see no one raising a hand for questions or further information or discussion on this resolution.
Thank you. So then I call on Ann Brown to introduce Resolution 4.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. As chair of the Resolutions Committee, I move adoption of Resolution 4, revised canons to amend Canon 29B, Brookhaven Home for Boys. This is a resolution that came up fairly late because Brookhaven needed to officially change their name from Brookhaven Home for Boys to the Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. They did that in their own board meeting, and we need to do it as a diocese to ensure that our canons and their board regulations rules are in concert. This amendment to the canon merely changes the name. It does not do anything else to the canon having to do with Brookhaven, but I move adoption. And Chancellor Little can explain or answer questions about this.
Indeed. I'd be happy to do so now. And as Ann summarized, the Brookhaven institution, which has been a diocesan institution since the early 1950s, has found that its corporate name and its canonical name, the Brookhaven Home for Boys, is presenting some significant challenges and obstacles in funding sources. Brookhaven has used Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center for a number of years as its doing business as name, but some grant agencies and state funders look through to the official corporate name and see it as problematic for full inclusion of all children who may need the resources and care of Brookhaven. That prompted a 3 or 4 month review and discernment process at the Brookhaven board, which led to a decision to change the corporate name to Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center Incorporated. That Brookhaven board action happened approximately 2.5 weeks ago. The conforming changes to our Canon 29B now need to be made, and the conforming changes are just that. They are to conform. They are changing the canon, if the convention concurs, to align the canon with the new corporate name. There's a fairly detailed explanation that accompanies the proposed resolution that emphasizes the importance of the center being able to accept all children into the residential program, while making it clear that that includes adherence to its original mission to be a home for boys. I will stop there and be happy to take questions if as you wish.
Bishop Shannon, I see no one raising hands for questions or discussion on this resolution.
Thank you. The matters before the convention are Resolution 3, revised canons to amend Canon 8, deputation to provincial meetings, and Resolution 4, revised canons to amend Canon 29B, Brookhaven Home for Boys. Using election buddy, vote first on Resolution 3, yes to approve, or no to reject. Then staying in election buddy, scroll down to the ballot for Resolution 4, yes to approve, or no to reject. Election buddy will sort by clergy and lay orders, so you will not need to indicate your order on the ballots. Simply take the votes in order.
All right, the vote will be open momentarily.
Thank you, Sophie. And we will take a 2-minute pause for delegates to register their votes. Hopefully, we will get it done in that amount of time. And we will announce the results after we return from recessing the convention to meet as incorporators of the Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. Yes, you get to go to not 1, but 2 meetings tonight.
All right, and the vote is open.
All right, I'm calling everyone back. The next order of business requires us to recess this convention and convene as the incorporators of Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. The principal benefactor of Brookhaven, Skiva Spear, liked the idea of turning the Diocese of Vermont Convention delegates into incorporators who elect trustees through recessing the convention for that purpose. And so the articles of incorporation were written that way. I call for a motion to recess diocesan convention and convene as the incorporators of Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center.
Bishop, I see Lucas Kruger has raised his hand.
Is there a second?
I see Melissa Larry has raised her hand.
Is there any discussion? Great. Seeing no discussion, the question before us is recessing diocesan convention in order to convene as the incorporators of Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. Please indicate a vote in favor by using the raised hand function on Zoom. Oh, no, I guess we're using a Zoom poll.
That was my mistake. I had it built on accident. We will indeed be raising hands.
Okay. I see lots of hands. Is that most of the people?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. I now declare this convention the Brookhaven Incorporators Group and call to order the annual meeting of Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. The annual report of the Brookhaven Board of Trustees was duly filed and is included in the materials posted on the convention website and the pre-convention journal. I call on Paul Olson for introduction of nominees to the Brookhaven Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Bishop. This is the exciting election of the evening. It is a contested election. There are 4 nominees to fill 3 open positions as Brookhaven trustees. The Reverend Paul Habersang, the Reverend Beth Ann Meyer of Christ Church Montpelier, Kay Trafton of St. Peter's Bennington, and Linda Runyon of St. John's in Randolph. The full nomination report for information on all of the nominees is available on the diocesan website in the nomination packet, and there should be a link available for that in the chat.
The matter before us is the election of 3 trustees for Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center. Please vote using Election Buddy.
All right, the ballot will be open in a moment. And the vote is now open.
Remember to refresh your browser so that you can see the new ballot.
While you all are continuing to vote, we will be playing a slideshow that Brookhaven prepared. All right, the vote is still open, but I am going to close it in a minute. All right. The vote is closing now. And the vote is closed.
I will announce the results momentarily. All right, these are the results of the vote. The Reverend Paul Habersing has been elected to the Brookhaven Board of Trustees with 79 votes. The Reverend Beth Ann Meyer has been elected with 96 votes. And Linda Runyon has been elected with 88. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who was willing to stand for election. Much appreciated. Is there any other business to come before the annual meeting of the incorporators of the Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center? Seeing no other business coming before the Brookhaven meeting, the question before us, oh wait, I have one thing. If you don't know where to find their website, it's easy to Google, and they are in the process of gathering Christmas presents for the kids that attend there and that live there. And so I encourage everyone to find a way to contribute to the Christmas presents that are being bought for the kids and for just the running of the whole center. You'll find a wish list on the website, and it's always much appreciated when we do that. So anyhow, so now seeing no other business coming before the Brookhaven meeting, The question before us is adjourning the annual meeting of the Incorporators of Brookhaven Treatment and Learning Center and reconvening as the annual convention of the Diocese of Vermont. Please indicate a vote in favor by using the raised hand function in Zoom. All right, I think. All right, we're ready. So I call back to order the 234th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont, being the 191st Annual Convention of the Diocese of Vermont. I would also like to announce the outcome of the votes on resolutions 3 and 4. Resolution 3 passes with 99% voting yes, and resolution 4 passes with 100%, and I will say what those are again. So resolution 3 is revised canons to amend canon 8 for the deputation to provincial meetings, and resolution 4 revised canons to amend canon 29B Brookhaven Home for Boys, and both have passed. Thank you. I call on Anne Brown to introduce the remaining 2 resolutions, beginning with resolution 5, and a vote will follow debate on both resolutions.
Thank you, Right Reverend Madam. We have 2 remaining resolutions. One that we voted to put on the agenda, and that will come after this next one, resolution 5, which is a resolution to join with other communities around the country, really, in declaring ourselves to be an apartheid-free community. There is, I believe, Wally Good available to speak to this resolution, and I move its adoption. Resolution 5, declaring the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont to be apartheid-free.
Yes, I did see Wally here, so I invite Wally Good of Holy Trinity Swanton to speak to this resolution.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to present. We had a very nice discussion at the pre-convention hearing. I don't have much to add. I will say that this is an outgrowth of my commitment when I took Sacred Ground training, that what would you do to help advance sacred ground in your life, and this has been an important issue for me for quite a long time. In 2021, we as a diocese recognized the apartheid system in Israel and Palestine, and this is a follow-on resolution for a little bit of a next step. And that is introduced by the American Friends as a concept of a next step towards this goal of removing another apartheid system from the world. So the points are that we affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for all people, including the Palestinian people. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, and discrimination and oppression. We declare ourselves to be an apartheid-free community, and we pledge to join others in working towards ending support for apartheid as practiced in Israel and the settler colonization that's happening there and the military occupations. There's a long series of explanations that is included, and a really nice detailed explanation of what apartheid is about and why Amnesty International made a decision to be clearly state it's an apartheid system. So with that, I will also support and second this motion.
Is there any discussion? And I invite Wally Good to remain unmuted so that he may answer any questions about the resolution.
Recognize Gil Mathis, who has his hand raised.
Yes, I'm saddened to oppose this resolution. My opposition is based on my concern of the impact of some of the language in this resolution on our Jewish brothers and sisters within the state of Vermont. They're experiencing increased anti-Semitism, and this, I think, adds to the problem rather than providing a solution. Thank you.
Are there others who wish to speak to this resolution? I see Susan McMillan has raised her hand.
Susan McMillan, the Cathedral Church of St. Paul. I'm also saddened to oppose this. I fully support the desire to end the cultural and structural and direct violence in Palestine. And I agree it is a moral imperative. But I disagree with the third bullet that declares that we are an apartheid-free diocese or community. And I believe we do aspire to this, but declaring us to be apartheid-free does not make it so. Thank you.
See, Dan Murphy has raised her hand, wishes to speak to the resolution.
I have a question as a follow-up about that third bullet. I think for the sponsor, because when I did more research on the resolution, this is the pledge exactly as worded by the Friends, by the Quakers. So my understanding is that it is of a piece that we either say yes to the whole thing because this is the pledge that congregations and entities across the United States are being asked to take, that we can't pick and choose the words because it's a pledge that different organizations, churches, mosques, temples are being asked to sign on to. Could the sponsor speak to that?
I think you are correct.
David Ganter, I recognize you to speak to the resolution.
Yes, I also had some question about the wording. And I talked with John Hermans, one of the sponsors. I did go to the Friends website and see that it is this same pledge that cities, churches, and other people are being asked to sign up for. So if you see a list of people who've signed up for this pledge, you know what the wording is that they used. So I plan on voting for it.
Noma Anderson, I recognize you to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Noma Anderson, St. Paul's Cathedral Church in Burlington. I have a question about procedure. I understand that this wording is taken from other documents and other organizations and associations have signed on, but I too have difficulty with the third bullet. So by saying it is based upon the original, are we saying we can't change our version? I'm not sure how that is landing. I'm not sure my question is,
I might ask the chair of the resolutions committee to speak to the language of the resolution and what, if anything, can be done to alter or change that. Anne, could you speak to that point in question?
Thank you, Paul. Every resolution that we have on the table could be amended. It would be helpful normally to have that amendment proposed at the beginning of the session. This particular resolution, I believe, as Gayan and Dave have said, as well as Wally, is a sort of verbatim pledge created by the Quakers that is being either accepted or not in various places around the country, congregations, cities, and other entities. If you want to amend it in some way, you can do that. You need to quickly send a proposal in writing to communications@diovermont.org, which would strike out whatever you want to strike out and add in what you want to add in. It probably it can be done procedurally. It's part of the rules of order that a resolution can be amended, but we did ask that all amendments be submitted by 6:30.
Thank you for the clarification. Thanks.
I recognize Becky Coletti, who has raised her hand to speak to the resolution.
Thank you very much, Paul. This is a difficult bullet point, and I've been really praying on it since our discussion last week, and our session on Saturday underscored for me how far we haven't come. And I pray that we'll adopt this resolution, because if we can't commit to being an apartheid-free organization or institution, I think that's opposed to everything that Jesus and God asked me to do. And I'm almost speechless, which for those of you who have met me, know that's unusual, but thank you.
Recognize Diane Montague, who's raised her hand to speak to the resolution.
Thank you very much. So I have been also studying this since I didn't understand it at the last meeting. May I suggest that as we do in our baptismal vows, what we can say in our hearts without getting into a big amendment thing is, I will with God's help. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize Linda Maloney, who wishes to speak to the resolution.
At the last meeting. May I suggest that as we do in our baptismal vows, what we can say in our hearts without getting into a big amendment thing is, I will with God's help. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize Linda Maloney, who wishes to speak to the resolution.
Hi there. I must say that the substance of this resolution appeals.
May I suggest that as we do in our baptismal vows, what we can say in our hearts without getting into
It appears that Diane is on a loop.
I will with God's help. Thank you.
So,
Recognize Linda Maloney, who wishes to speak to the resolution.
Yes.
Hi there.
I must say that the substance of this resolution appeals.
May I suggest that as we do in our baptismal vows, what we can say in our hearts without getting into
it appears that Diane is. Sorry, Linda, we're going through some technical difficulty there. Wait a second, I think we may have resolved it. Go ahead if you are able to unmute.
I must say that the substance of this resolution appeals.
May I suggest that as we do in our baptismal vows, what we can say in our hearts without getting into
Sorry, Linda, we're going through some.
Linda, I'm going to unmute you again in a second, but if you could pause the live stream I believe you're watching, which is giving us a feedback loop of what we've been saying previously. I think that will solve your issues, or at least mute the live stream for a moment so we can hear you speak.
Now I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Linda, please do share.
My picture has disappeared, so I don't know whether I'm being heard or not.
You are, and we see you as well.
Now I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Can I speak? Okay.
Yes.
All right, let's try again.
Yes. Yes. Linda, please do share.
My picture has disappeared, so I don't know whether I'm being heard or not.
You are, and we see you as well.
Okay, good.
Now I'm unmuted.
All right.
Yes. Can I speak?
Okay.
Yes.
Ready to go? All right, let's try again.
We still have the same feedback issue from your devices at your home. So I don't know that this is going to work unless you're able to have one of the devices quieted.
Loop again.
You are, and we see you as well.
Okay,
Now
good.
I'm unmuted.
All right.
Yes. Can I speak?
Could I
Yes.
potentially move on to another
Let's try
speaker?
again.
We still have the same. It seems like we're not going to be able to hear from you because of the technological problem. This is going to work unless you're able to have one of the devices quieted.
Loop again.
You are, and we see you as well. Okay. Good.
I'm unfortunately going to need to, I believe, move to another speaker because we can't get through to you to have it come through normally to the rest of us.
Well, someone made a good suggestion that Linda could add her comment into the chat so that then it could be read out to everyone else.
That would be the best alternative, I think, at this point, given the technological challenge that we're facing there.
Yes.
So Linda, if you can add your thoughts in a chat submission, we would all be able to share that and see it. And I could move on to another person who might wish to speak to the resolution. William Secord has raised a hand.
Yes, Bill Secord, St. Martin's Church in Fairleigh, Vermont. I'm concerned about the fourth bullet, which pledges to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime. That can be interpreted that we would work to remove all support for Israel, assuming that the Israel's apartheid regime refers to the present state of Israel and its government. For that reason, I'm opposed to it, unless that can be explained. Thank you.
I see a hand raised by Craig Smith wishing to speak to the resolution.
I'm Craig Smith. I go to church in All Saints Church in South Burlington. I'm retired. Retired priest. So, in response to Bill's question, the apartheid in South Africa was ended by a number of efforts, boycott, investment and that kind of thing. So, and sanctions. So the idea is that to differentiate between Israel's policies and Jewish people is a hard one to make. However, it's got to be said. Just like there's a difference between the United States policies and whether they represent us at all times. We're making a statement of being against that divided system that treats people unequally. That does require usually the withholding of money, put pressure on government to do something to prevent genocide.
We have 3 minutes remaining in the allocated amount of time for discussion and debate of this resolution. I understand there may have been an amendment proposed by someone as we were discussing. And I just wanted to check with Sophie, if I could, to see, was that received?
Yes, it has been received.
Okay, and I believe the sender of the proposed amendment to the resolution is Kim Harvey, who I could recognize to speak to that. If
Thank you, and thank you, Bishop Shannon and Convention. I never remember what to say when I'm getting on. Here is my proposed amendment. We declare, for the third bullet, we declare that we will strive to be an apartheid-free community. I do not have a change for the fourth bullet, as just discussed by the other gentleman. So I move that amendment. Again, we declare that we will strive to be an apartheid-free community.
we're seeing there
Okay.
the original resolution, so we can see how this amendment would affect the third bullet. Is there a second to that proposed amendment? I see Nancy Roth has raised her hand. Hold on, Nancy, you just need to be unmuted.
Okay,
There we go.
I second it from St. James Church, Essex Junction.
Bishop, I should turn it back to you at this point, I believe.
Okay, so the matter before the convention is the amendment to resolution 5. And I have to ask, is there any discussion? All right. So seeing none, the matter before us is the amendment to resolution 5. Please indicate your vote using the Zoom poll that will appear on your screen. Vote yes to approve the amendment, and then or vote no to reject the amendment. The amendment passes with 77% of the people saying yes. Thank you. Oh,
So,
sorry.
Bishop,
So
there
now
remains just 3 minutes of discussion time left for the resolution as amended.
Right, we now return to debate on the main motion. Well, on this new motion. And I see that Linda Maloney's comment is in the chat, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to read it, but I don't know, somebody, it'd be good if somebody could read that.
I would be glad to, since we weren't able to technologically work out her ability to do it on her own.
Thank you.
Linda Maloney writes, I support the substance of this resolution, though I find the language of apartheid very harsh. I recently read a book about peace movements and groups in Israel, and I wonder how this would affect their efforts. Oh, where'd it go? I just lost part of what she was saying. To achieve a peaceful and faith-based solution. I also wonder where there has been any consultation with the king and people of Jordan, whose lives have been so severely affected by this ongoing strife. They deserve to be heard. And those were the comments from Linda Maloney that she wanted to share. I do see that Anna Kennedy has raised her hand to speak to the amended resolution.
I'm in favor of the amended resolution. I think it is critical that we take a stand in this time when our tax dollars are supporting a regime that is indeed apartheid. And yeah, we need to step up and stand with the people who are opposing it, apartheid. Thank you. Sorry, St. Andrews, St. Johnsbury.
Thank you. We have 1 minute remaining in discussion on this resolution. If anyone else has not spoken or wishes to speak, it would be their time now. Martha Mackey, I see your hand raised to speak to the resolution.
Martha Mackey, St. Peter's, Bennington. I just want to strongly support this resolution. There is no doubt that this is an apartheid state, and it is essential that we as a diocese, we as a group of faith people take a strong stance on this and lead in this matter, both amongst people of faith and beyond.
Thank you. Bishop, we have reached the 20-minute mark of discussion and debate on this resolution.
Thank you. I call on Ann Brown to introduce Resolution 6. And I will also say that we didn't call on Gayan again because according to the rules of order, we only speak a second time if time allows, if there's no one else trying to speak. But anyway, I call on Ann Brown to introduce Resolution 6, becoming a sanctuary diocese. A vote on resolutions 5 and 6 will follow debate.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. And just as a point of clarification for the rules, if by any chance there is an amendment proposed for Resolution 6, the amount of time taken for debate and discussion of that is included in the 20 minutes, not tacked on to the other end of it. Resolution 6 is one that emerged at the kind of last minute after we had our in-person convention on Saturday. It is kind of a result of both Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas's comments and recent events in our political life that make this more necessary. It is asking us to explore becoming a sanctuary diocese. It has a number of resolve clauses in it, and all of them point towards the end of the resolution, but I would like to move that we adopt this resolution and ask the bishop to have someone describe its contents.
Thank you, Anne. I invite the Reverend Canon Lee Crawford of St. Mary's Northfield to speak to this resolution.
Thank you, Right Reverend Madam Lee Allison Crawford, St. Mary's Northfield. The hour is late. I will try to be succinct. Just a couple of things. As Anne said, this is a response to what Canon Kelly Brown Douglas said when she called us to God's mission to be makers of just peace. Becoming a sanctuary is a matter of basic human dignity. Everyone is God's beloved. No one is an illegal or alien. Everyone needs a home. Mass deportations are not some far-off threat. They will affect our families and lives in Vermont, friends, people in our congregations. And as noted in the explanation, 1,000 to 1,200 dairy farm workers do not have documentation. We forget that we're a border state and 20% of entries to Vermont come from Canada, and people come to Vermont for many reasons. The Episcopal Church, and I could go into the whole history, the Episcopal Church has been involved in migrant ministry for the past century and more, starting in the late 1800s. And over time, this effort led to the Presiding Bishop's Fund for World Relief, which then became Episcopal Relief and Development and Episcopal Migration Ministries. And in the 1980s, Episcopal Migration Ministries was formally established, and today is only one of only 10 national agencies through which refugees enter the United States. By passing this resolution, we can spend the year learning and discerning what will best serve our neighbors. We can examine what we're asking of our congregations and institutions and what it will look like to be a sanctuary diocese in this context. We can also explore initial steps during this year. By accepting this challenge from Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas to make just peace, this resolution continues in that vein, assuring others that the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont will not only continue to respect the dignity of every human being, but will also find ways to act on that commitment. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? And I invite Lee Crawford to remain unmuted so she may answer any questions about the resolution.
Recognize Earl Coopercamp, who has his hand raised to speak to the resolution.
Yes, I think this is so important. Just a quick quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late, and there is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. And I think we do need to start this. I just note, first of all, that we have neighbors, friends who work for Immigration's Custom and Enforcement, and possibly in our congregations who work with the Border Patrol. They are charged, the Border Patrol can operate within 90 miles of the border. And so that takes in almost half of the state of Vermont. And so this is not something that's far away down on the southern border. This is literally in the communities where many of us live. And then secondly, we did see in past debates on this and actions within our country, family separation. And I think that will, quite possibly be what could happen in this. So therefore, I think to really start now to work to see what we can do to become a sanctuary diocese is really important. So I'm sorry for this coming in so late, but I just think it's so important. And I would ask if we do pass this resolution that all of us pray on this to make this happen so that when we come back again next year, we can really meet this urgency. Thank you.
Call upon Luke Kruger to share. He has his hand raised to speak to the resolution.
Thank you. Luke Krieger, St. Paul's Wells, Right Reverend Madam. I rise in support of this resolution. As we are approaching Advent and Christmas, I remember that Jesus and his family had to flee. They had to flee to Egypt. We are a faith founded by a refugee. And in Christmas time, we're reminded to come out of the darkness of Advent into the light. And hopefully this resolution will allow us to do this for our brethren. And I'd like to share, as Earl shared Martin Luther King Jr., I want to share a Christmas meditation from Thomas Merton. And he says, the mystery of Christmas, therefore, lays upon us all a debt and an obligation to the rest of the human race and to the whole created universe. We who have seen the light of Christ are obliged by the greatness of the grace that has been given us to make known the presence of the Savior to the ends of the earth. This we will do not only by preaching the glad tidings of his coming, but above all by revealing him in our lives. Christ is born to us in order that he may appear to the whole world through us. This is an opportunity for us to allow Christ to shine through by offering sanctuary, care, empathy, and love to those who need it and are coming for it. Thank you.
I see Linda Maloney has raised a hand. I am fearful that technology may still baffle us on this, but Linda, do you have something to share on the resolution? Are you able to unmute?
So,
Linda, go ahead.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I have lived in Franklin County for almost 20 years now. And during that whole time, I've been very involved with migrant justice and with the workers directly. They are here to help keep their families alive in Mexico. And they are directly helping to keep our economy alive, our families alive here in Franklin County. If our farm workers were carried off, this county would go bankrupt. And there are 4 parishes here who would be very much in distress without the economy. So it's I don't want to be self-serving, but this is a mutual help that the immigrants and we, the locals, have going on. And we just can't do without it.
Thank you. Call upon Kim Hardy to speak to the resolution.
Thank you. This is Kim Hardy, St. James in Essex Junction, and now Calvary and Underhill. And Bishop Shannon, to you in convention, I strongly stand for this resolution. And I thank those who brought it to us. These are our neighbors, these are our friends, and these are our families. It is not they, it is us that we're talking about. And we're looking at least 4 years of horrendous bigotry. We know what we've heard in the news. This is terrifying to our neighbors. It's terrifying to us. I stand strongly and hope you will pass this resolution as a start. Thank you.
Susan McGarry, to speak to the resolution.
Bishop Shannon, I'm Susan McGarry, and I am retired clergy of the diocese. I worship at St. Thomas and Grace in Brandon. We said for a long time that we Episcopalians, we are what we pray. But I also think the symbols that we surround ourselves with speak somewhat to what we are and what we ascribe to be. All these red doors we've put in our churches all these years for so long, and way before our generations and ancestors. That's a symbol of sanctuary, that our churches are sanctuaries. And I can't think of any time, at least in my lifetime, when it's been more important to live into that symbol and be that symbol and provide for the people who are looking at such incredible peril, our neighbors looking at such incredible peril in the short years to come. So we are what we pray, and let us live into and be real exemplars of the symbols that we've carried for so long, our red doors.
Diane Montague, you wish to speak to the resolution.
Diane Montague, St. Andrews in St. Johnsbury, Bishop Shannon. As someone who in the last several years of living in Vermont has worked with the Vermont Migrant Education Program all across the Northeast Kingdom, I know personally many of the people who have worked here and who maybe are still working here. And I just want you to know that they live in terror. They live in terrible conditions. They are amazing people with great resolve to support their families. And I have come to love and appreciate them very much indeed. And I stand in full support of this motion. Thank you very much.
Dan Murphy, to speak to the resolution.
Yeah, I wanted to speak in support of what Linda said and the person who, Diane. So I'm from St. Stephen's, Middlebury, Addison County. Like Franklin County is a huge dairy state. I was for a time the agriculture reporter at our local paper. So I was party to a lot of conversations with dairy farmers and farm workers, sometimes in translation. The irony is that our dairy farmers need these workers, many of whom are here to support their families, but also some have fled gang and drug violence where they live. And you can come to Vermont legally as a migrant worker to pick apples. We have what's called an H-2A program that brings migrants from Jamaica. But dairy farming is not a seasonal work. It's 365 days a year, 24/7, and there is no legal pathway for these absolutely essential people to be here. I also want to say that, we have all kinds of refugees and migrants in Vermont. And as we've heard during the campaign, there's no distinction, it doesn't seem, from the incoming administration as to what is legal and what is not legal. We have people here, there's in Burlington an association of Africans living in Vermont. We have people resettled here as refugees from all over the world. We have people here who are green card workers. During the Muslim ban, I did an article on Muslims in Middlebury who were here on a green card, who were afraid. somebody was on sabbatical back home in Pakistan, and he didn't know if he and his family were going to be able to come back. So I think the problem will be complex, and I'm so glad that Lee and Earl drafted this resolution. Thank you.
Stan Baker, you wish to speak to the resolution?
Yes, I fully support the resolution, and because of the lateness of the hour, I'd like to call the question.
I'm checking with our chancellor to see that I can do that.
That's a motion to cease debate, Bishop Shannon, which is in order and requires a 2/3 vote to prevail.
That's what I thought. So I guess that we have to make a motion.
I would also note that there are 7 minutes left in the debate time. So we're getting close one way or the other.
So Stan, are you still wanting us to take a vote to decide to shorten the debate
I
time?
would rather not have debate on closing debate take longer than the 7 minutes. So it's fine with me to let it play out. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Then let me call upon Jim Ballard to speak to the resolution.
Jim Ballard, St. Luke's, St. Albans. I strongly support this resolution. I've met a few of the workers that stopped by here in Milton at our vegetable stand that we offer vegetables by donation, and they are very warm and caring, and we certainly need them in our communities.
Thank you. Diane Montague, I know that you had your hand raised before, and I wondered if I perhaps cut you off, but you're okay. You have spoken, shared your thoughts. Good. Okay. Are there others who wish to speak to this resolution for the remaining time of debate? Bishop, I might turn it back to you then.
Okay, thank you. I just and I'm glad that there's a minute or two for me to say something. And not to bring an unofficial question that was asked in the chat, but it has occurred to me from my own experience from 2016. And I was getting ready for service. I was in the sacristy, and about a third of the congregation where I was serving at the cathedral in Indianapolis are from Central America. And two of the acolytes came to me and asked me, are they going to take my mother? I didn't have an answer for them. And I will say that, you know, we like to do things decently and in order. And, you know, the community organizer in me knows that sometimes it's not going to be that way. And so I'm glad that we have this resolution. But I do want people to understand that sanctuary also, you know, involves making plans quickly and without, you don't have time to wait. So we got to work. We gathered furniture. We had, a living space built. I mean, man, we had an endowment, so it was different. It was easier to get things in place so that we could accommodate people. We set up legal clinics and did a bunch of other things to help, but understand that we may be faced with a moment where we don't have time for study. So that's all I have to say. So the matters before us are Resolution 5, declaring the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont to be apartheid-free, and Resolution 6, becoming a sanctuary diocese. Please vote using Election Buddy and vote on each resolution. Yes to approve and no to reject. When you see the votes, there will be 2 votes, so make sure that you scroll down to select each portion of the ballot in front of you. And while the delegates are completing your votes, we will take a brief 2-minute pause, and then I will announce the results following.
All right, and the vote is open.
Because it's been a while since we voted last, you may find that you have to re-enter your access key and password that came to you in the email.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all. Something is happening on the back end of Election Buddy. If you will give me a couple of minutes to figure this out, we may have to launch a new ballot, but that is no issue.
Thank you. For those who may have missed it, Sophie is creating a new ballot. So what you have tried to do just now, it's not going to work. So hold on, they will announce it momentarily when it's time to vote. While we're waiting for Sophie to create a new ballot, I'd like to call on Ann Brown to present the resolution, the courtesy resolutions, please.
Not to interrupt or cut off business, but the vote is now actually open. I apologize. There was an error and glitch with the system. The voters did not register, but you should all be able to access the ballot now.
Thank you. Right. So now I call Ann Brown to introduce the courtesy resolutions, please.
Thank you, Bishop Shannon. As is our tradition, the Resolutions Committee offers a variety of resolutions that thank, honor, or commend for prayer individuals or groups. The full text of courtesy resolutions, I believe, may be found on the diocesan website, although poor Sophie got a couple of them pretty late. They may not be there yet. But do take time to read them, as they will be there if they're not there now. As they honor and recognize individuals and groups for valuable work and contributions to our diocese and beyond. The first one is thanking our bishop, Right Reverend Madam. Ah, good, you've got them. For her convention sermon. I'm not going to read them. In the old days, we used to read through these things, but when we're not in person and you can see them on the screen, we don't need to do that. We really do thank her for her challenges to us, and that's in the second resolve. Really important also her focus on the critical importance of adopting a spirit of koinonia, which is in the first resolve. And the last resolve is a statement that we wish Bishop Shannon and Phil a restful and blessed time as they embark on a sabbatical next spring, and that we look forward to their return among us, refreshed and renewed. The second courtesy resolution thanks the Reverend Canon Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, both for her presence at the convention and her presentations on being the church when our very humanity is at stake. I found her remarks energizing, challenging, and in a way got me out of my funk. Those are my personal comments about it, but our resolutions committee is proposing this courtesy resolution. We invite her to return back at any time she wishes. I believe part of her talk spurred interest in the resolution that we have just discussed. She's given us some challenges as well as has the bishop, and I hope we will take them to heart. The third courtesy resolution thanks the organizers of the Diocesan Convention. We started this to thank the people that put together the Saturday day, the in-person day, which was so wonderful for us all to get together and actually see each other face to face. It's been, even though we had this last year, it had been a while, so that we could gather and gather joyfully. So we're thanking Dean Greta Getline and members of the cathedral. We're thanking Jenny Knowles. You watched the slideshow during the interim spots while we were voting. Jenny was joyful in her, I put it, capturing the faces of people at the convention. And she also helped arrange for the snacks and inspired the communion bread bake-off. We're thanking the Reverend Kim Hardy, the Reverend Lucy Pellegrini, and the cathedral organist, Peter Burton, who planned and carried out the liturgy. We're thanking the participants in the communion bread bake-off and the winners from St. Luke, St. Albans, and Grace Sheldon. And we give thanks for the opportunity to come together. We also, in the bottom resolve, thank members of the Committee on Dispatch of Business and others who were involved in making this whole convention a success. Finally, we have two resolutions. Resolution 4, thanks Presiding Bishop Michael Curry for his ministry as the 27th Presiding Bishop of the Church. His joyful promotion of the Jesus movement has been key for us as Episcopalians over the last 9 years. And we wish him all the best as he moves back, I believe, to North Carolina. And finally, we are congratulating the Most Reverend Sean Rowe on his investiture as the 28th presiding bishop. And this talks about his vision statement about how we reorient church-wide structures to support diocesan ministry, applauding his attention to having his installation at a very small space, smaller than lots of our own churches, actually, to sort of model a new way of doing things that does not revolve around giant ceremony. So those are our courtesy resolutions, and I encourage you all to read them, and we will be sending them to the people who we are honoring and thanking. So Bishop Shannon, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
We can vote on those maybe, and then have the
Yes.
results of the other votes.
Yes, although I wanted to thank you all after, well, just let's just do this vote by raising our hands first. And then I'll thank the committee after we've completed the other, reporting out on the other vote. But can you take that? Thank you. And of course, I think we're good to say that we have passed our courtesy resolutions quite soundly. Thank you, everyone. And now let me report on the votes on resolution 5 and 6. Resolution 5 declaring the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont to be apartheid-free passes with a 78% vote. And resolution 6 becoming a sanctuary diocese passes with a 95% vote. Thank you. Many thanks to the Resolutions Committee Your work is well appreciated. I call on Paul Olson, Secretary of Convention, for a request to authorize the approval of minutes of this convention.
As approved at last year's convention, the Dispatch of Business Committee did approve the minutes for the 2023 annual convention. And we make a request that this convention authorize the Dispatch of Business Committee to approve the minutes of this convention.
I call for a motion that the convention authorizes the Dispatch of Business Committee to approve the minutes of this convention.
Recognize Christine Mosley with her hand raised.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Stan Baker has his hand raised.
Second.
The matter before us is authorizing the Dispatch of Business Committee to approve the minutes of this convention. Please indicate your vote using the Zoom poll that will appear on your screen. Vote yes to authorize the committee to approve the minutes. Vote no to withhold authorization. All right. I guess there's a few coming in still.
Okay.
All right, the motion passes with 100%. Thank you. Let's see. The date of the 2025 Diocesan Convention will be, well, at least that's the in-person portion, will be October 25th at the Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Burlington. And Thursday, October 30th will be our business session at 6 p.m. The online pre-convention meeting will be on Thursday, October 16 at 6 p.m. Okay. Is there any other business to be done? I do not see anything. I always feel like I shouldn't adjourn until after the prayers, but that's the way we do it. So don't go anywhere until I finish praying and you've been dismissed by the deacon. So I call for a motion to adjourn.
I recognize Becky Coletti.
Thank you.
This is Becky Coletti from Fairhaven, St. Luke's in Fairhaven, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Luke Kruger.
Right, Reverend Madam, Luke Krieger, St. Paul's Wells. I second the motion to adjourn.
The matter before us is adjourning the 191st Convention of the Diocese of Vermont. Please indicate a vote in favor by using the raised hand function in Zoom. We'll take that down. Sophie, can you take down the adjourn slide, please? Yeah, I figured that one would pass really well. Okay. But don't go until I've prayed. God be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Oh God, your unfailing providence sustains the world we live in and the life we live. Watch over those both night and day who work while others sleep, and grant that we may never forget that our common life depends upon each other's toil. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Live without fear. Your Creator has made you holy, has always protected you, and loves you as a mother. Go in peace to follow the good road, and may the blessing of God, holy eternal majesty, Holy Incarnate Word, and Holy Abiding Spirit be with you now and forevermore. Amen. Deacon Susan?
I don't know where I am. Let us go forth into the world, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit.
Thanks be to God. I now declare that this convention is adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.